we're going to jump right into one of the most counterintuitive ideas in AI interaction. It's something that separates those inconsistent hit-or-miss results from consistently sharp outputs. And I'll tell you right now, it has almost nothing to do with finding some kind of perfect prompt template. And that right there, that's the paradox we're going to unpack. We all assume that more specific, more detailed instructions have to give us better results, right? But the truth is, when you over-specify, you're not actually guiding the model, you're handcuffing it. You end up engineering the very same shallow robotic output you were trying to avoid in the first place. So, this leads us to the core concept here, the control paradox. See, the quality of an AI's output isn't about getting maximum control, not at all. It's about finding the optimal balance of constraints, just enough to give it clear direction, but not so many that you completely suffocate its ability to generate something valuable. And you can see how this plays out on both ends of the spectrum. With too few constraints, the model just drifts. It has no idea what it's supposed to be optimizing for, so the output you get is vague, inconsistent, basically unreliable. But then you go to the other extreme, too many constraints, and you just get rigidity. The model stops thinking and becomes a simple token matching machine, spitting out a response that follows all the rules but has zero actual nuance. So here's the big takeaway. We are not aiming for absolute maximum control. The real goal is what we call bounded flexibility. Think of it like this. You're giving the AI a very well-defined sandbox to play in. The boundaries are clear, but inside that space, it has the freedom to explore and connect patterns. That is the space where the really high-quality, insightful outputs are born. Okay, so let's get practical. How does this actually look when you're interacting with an AI? Well, we can break it down into two different modes of instruction. On one side, you have what we'll call hard commands, which are all about dictating execution. And on the other, you have soft steering, which is about guiding toward an objective. And this comparison really hits it home. A hard command is trying to micromanage the whole process. Exactly 500 words. Use these exact phrases. It's all about the how. But a soft steering instruction, that provides a directional signal. It defines what success looks like, prioritize clarity, use examples, without getting bogged down in dictating the exact path to get there. You know, the big problem with hard commands, especially when the task is complex, is that they're just structurally fragile. When you force that token-level compliance, you often create what's called constraint collision. That's where two of your instructions actually contradict each other, like telling it to be wildly creative but only use these 5 approved words. This just limits the model's ability to pull from its vast knowledge, and you end up with those hollow, mechanical outputs we all hate. Soft direction, on the other hand, is where the real power is. It aligns the model with an objective function. In plain English, it just tells the system what to aim for. It guides the optimization, giving the model the adaptability it needs to produce something that's genuinely useful, nuanced, and actually in line with your real goal. And all of this points to maybe the most important mental shift you can make. You have to stop thinking of yourself as an instructor and start thinking of yourself as a designer. Your constraints aren't just fences that limit the AI. They are the architectural tools you use to actively shape the entire generative space that it works within. Now, there's a technical term for this. It's called the bounded probability space. Just think of it as the entire universe of possible answers the model could come up with. Every single instruction you give it is an act of shaping that universe. You're carving it down, focusing it, and pointing the model toward a very specific, high-value region within it. So you can imagine if you're under-controlled, you just say something vague like be creative, the search space is enormous and totally undefined. The model has no clear target, so the result feels almost random, completely unaligned with what you actually wanted. But then you've got the total opposite. When you over-control, the search space collapses down to a single, brittle point. The model loses all its power to explore or synthesize, and the result is rigid, predictable, and almost always pretty low value. This is what the experts are doing. They're aiming for that sweet spot, optimal steering. They shape the space to create a zone of what we call structured exploration. You've made the target area perfectly clear, but you've also given the model the freedom it needs to find the best possible answer within that well-designed space. Okay, so how do you actually do this? Well, it's a 3-step process. First, you use negative constraints to get rid of all the stuff you don't want. Second, you use positive constraints to focus its attention on what you do want. And third, and this is absolutely critical, you give it clear evaluation criteria. You tell it what a good output actually looks like. You see, you're not just writing a prompt anymore, you're designing a system. Now look, this isn't magic. There's always a fundamental trade-off at play here. Every time you interact with an AI, you're making a strategic choice between how predictable you need the output to be and how much generative richness you're willing to allow for. And this chart lays it all out pretty clearly. Hard commands, they give you super high predictability, but the richness is really low. No constraints at all, that just gives you high randomness, which is almost never useful. Soft steering is that productive sweet spot, right in the middle, balancing that predictability with the potential for new, high-value outputs. To put it another way, with hard commands, your main benefit is predictability, but the risk you're taking on is that your constraints will collide and just break the output. With soft steering, the benefit is massive adaptability, but the risk is that if your objective isn't clear, you can get intent misalignment. Your job as the designer is really to manage that risk by being crystal clear on your objective. So, to bring this all home, let's turn these ideas into a little diagnostic you can use for your own work. Here are 3 questions you should ask yourself to audit your own interaction model with any AI. First, seriously ask yourself, are my instructions usefully narrowing down the possibilities, or have I gotten so specific, so controlling, that I've actually collapsed the space to nothing, leaving zero room for a quality response to even emerge? Second, go back and actually analyze your prompts. Look for the places where you are dictating the exact step-by-step execution, instead of just defining a clear objective and guiding the model's direction towards it. Where are you micromanaging? And finally, this is the most fundamental question of all. Is your mental model that of an architect, carefully designing the space for a good output to be found? Or are you still acting like a micromanager, trying to control every single token? Because the answer to that question, well, that's going to define the quality of every single result you get.